Hi, this is Cindy Beth Lever. I'm the Executive Director of the Scleroderma Foundation Rocky Mountain Chapter, and tonight is the last in the four-part stress management training series. I'd like to introduce Elena Carr and Sydney Jane Roberts, who are doctoral students at UC Denver Clinical Psychology Program, and they will be leading us in the session this evening.
Great. Well, welcome everybody. So before we start our last session, we wanted to do a recap of the different themes that we covered in the last three sessions. So the first session we did really was introducing this concept of the mind-body connection. So really how our emotions and our thoughts can influence different aspects of our body, and oftentimes we notice the physical aspects of stress before we notice the emotional or mental aspects of it. And then in the second session, we talked about different types of cognitive distortions. So sometimes when we look at events, we might jump to conclusions or have different unrealistic ways of thinking that can really impact the outcome or our behaviors associated with those thoughts, subsequently the emotions, and then the behavior. And then in our last session, we talked about different coping skills. So sometimes in stressful situations, there's realistic stressors. So we talked about controllable aspects of that stressful situation and problem-focused coping strategies. So those are more analytical, solution-based. And then also when there's uncontrollable aspects of a situation. And we talked about emotion-focused coping. So what are different ways we can reduce the emotional reaction we have to a situation? And with that, we really phrased everything in the context of having a diagnosis such as scleroderma and how there's a lot of unknowns or things that are, we have no control over. Mm-hmm. And then for today's session, we're really going to be talking a lot about social support and how that is a really big part of stress management, but also self-care. So we've also sent, in between each session, different audio recordings, because part of stress management is really utilizing different relaxation techniques, breathing techniques, which can be helpful, just sort of tools to carry with you on the go if you run into a stressful situation. So I'll turn over to Sydney Jane to start talking about what social support is and how it really fits in the context of the stress management group.
Right. So today, like Elaine said, we're focusing on social support and self-care. So social support, we can think of it as the benefits that we get from our relationships. Sometimes when we're stressed, part of the reason is that we're really missing out on those benefits of our social support networks. So when we're thinking about our own social support networks, it's important to include every single source. So sometimes we can overlook pretty good sources of social support that we have. For example, your pets might be a really good source of social support for you, sometimes even better than other humans because they're always there for you and they're always willing to listen. Even acquaintances can be very important, and it's surprising how many people are willing to help if you ask them for it. So it's also important to keep in mind that good social support isn't just about numbers. When it comes to social support, quality really wins out over quantity. Yes, I said that right. So quality is more important than quantity, and even just a few good sources of social support can help so much when we need it. So social support, like what is it? It typically consists of thank you. I think, Cindy, could you actually click to the next slide?
Sure, sorry, I forgot to share the screen.
That's okay. And then the next one, just want to make sure we're caught up here. Sure, yeah, you can leave it there. So social support consists of either psychological and emotional support, informational support, and tangible benefits that we receive from our personal relationships. So we'll talk more about those differences in just a minute. Just to touch on the benefits of social support for a second. So social support benefits us in a lot of ways in both stressful and non-stressful situations. So when we are not feeling stressed, social support gives us a sense of warmth. It can provide intimacy, allows us a place to share our accomplishments, and we can also get tangible benefits from social support. So, if you have a partner that you share, split expenses with, that's the financial support that person gives you. So benefits when we're feeling stressed, these social support networks can offer us emotional and psychological consolation. It can comfort us. They can make us feel less lonely. And they can also provide, additional tangible or concrete support like that financial assistance or taking you to a doctor's appointment. And also information or access to information. So that could be your doctor providing you information about, a new treatment or part of your condition. That would be like informational support. And also, just everyday things like chores and financial help. Cindy, could you please click to the next slide? Go ahead.
So, the dog photo in there. So this slide really talks about who is typically a part of our social support network. So we can start with pets. We started talking about that a little bit. So pets are certainly a part of our social support network. Close family members, so it could be your spouse or partner, it could be your children, your parents, your siblings, close friends that you have, coworkers, and then also acquaintances. So really thinking about people who are active in your community. So if you are very faith-based and you attend church regularly, members of your church, or if there's any other activities. So if you have children and you're a huge part of the school culture, maybe part of PTA, something like that, those members as well can be a part of your social support network. So again, it's not so much about the quantity, it's about the quality. So Cindy, could you select the next slide, please?
Go too far?
Oh, looks like you're, yeah, perfect.
Great. So we talked a little bit about quantity of people in your life, that's important. But again, really focusing on the quality of social support. So when we think about, why is this important, quality versus quantity, we have to really think about every single social support in the context of even having one really quality-based relationship can serve as a stress buffer and a really great coping resource. Maybe that close friend or your spouse is someone that you can share a lot of your genuine raw worries with, or just even small stresses that you have throughout the day. It can also increase your sense of well-being, really feeling like you're understood, you're able to get things off your chest, and then also provide a sense of predictability and stability in your life. So just having that person there as a rock, not a dependent rock, but a rock, can be really great, just to know that if you're having a tough day, there is someone there that you can lean on for support. So it's just interesting to find out that there's different types of support. And Cindy Jane will talk a little bit about examples of each one.
Yeah, so we kind of spoke to this a little bit earlier, but the first type, and I think what people probably most often think of when they think of social support, is the psychological or emotional support. So this would be things like encouragement, having fun with someone, consolation or comfort from them, feelings of love. This could include like spiritual support from your faith group, prayers, sharing your concerns and fears, and just really helping you to feel a reduction of any like feelings of helplessness or being overwhelmed by the burdens that you might be experiencing just by having someone to kind of connect with and join you in your struggle. So the second type of social support is informational. So this one can be very important, especially if you're dealing with a diagnosis like scleroderma where there's a lot to it. It might be a new diagnosis for you. You might have never heard of it before, or there might be changes in your treatment plan and things like that. So this would be like sharing of personal knowledge or sharing of information about your condition or treatments for it, assistance in research of like needed information or materials, especially related to like decision making about your treatment to, so that you can promote these healthier behaviors and promote like good management of the disease. So this very often falls kind of in like what your doctors or other professionals will very often fall in this kind of like informational support category. And then the final category is tangible, which is so important. And this can include things like caretaking activities, so helping, helping around the household, like doing chores. This can be financial support. Finances are often a huge stressor for a lot of people. Having help with like changing your schedule at work. So like, if your boss is very flexible and like allows you some flexibility in your work schedule, childcare, and then, job sharing with a partner perhaps. So, kind of splitting that burden between you guys. So those are the three overarching categories of types of social support. Cindy, would you mind clicking to the next slide? So this is a figure that you all can do on your own at home, but I think it's really helpful to think about the different types of social support and the different types of people that you have in your lives that fit under each of those categories. And just kind of use this, and this is in your participant manual as well that Cindy sends around, and if you have not received that, we can help you get that. But it helps to just write down who fits into each of these categories so that you can just start to be aware of who you have in your social support network. I think Elena alluded to it earlier that very often we don't utilize our social support to the best that we could. A lot of times we'll just kind of tough it out or like not ask for help or do things on our own when we really could be benefiting from the other people in our lives.
And sometimes the people that are around us might not know how to help, but if you ask for it, oftentimes they're more than willing to help.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Cindy will ask you to click the next slide for us, please. Great. So one thing I'd like to mention before we go on to this example is in our third session, we talked about different types of coping. So there's problem-focused and emotion-focused. And sometimes when we try to use one of those strategies, there might be a mismatch. So, for example, if there's a stressful situation that comes up, like needing to schedule a doctor's appointment, but instead you're focusing more on emotion-focused coping strategies, there might be some mismatch in terms of being able to really reduce the stress. So the same could be said for different types of social support. So for example, if you feel like maybe from your partner you really want psychological or emotional support, but he or she is really only great at giving informational or tangible support, there might always be this sort of mismatch between the two, leaving you a little bit more frustrated. So it's always important when you notice more distress, when you're trying to apply different coping skills, to take a step back and try and reevaluate, is this person best equipped to meet my needs?
Mm-hmm.
And if not, maybe there's somebody else, like a close friend or a sibling or a close relative, that might be able to give you more of the emotional support that you need in that moment. So this first example is talking about a friend who calls daily to find out if you need to talk. And you're feeling very overwhelmed due to school or work demands, family obligations, and household chores. So from this type of support, I'll actually ask Jane, what type of support do you feel like your friend's offering?
So I would say they are probably offering me emotional support. Trying to be there for me if they know I'm stressed, but I'm not sure that's what I really need at that time.
And what would you say you feel like you need at that time, given everything going on with school and work demands?
Yeah, in this scenario, I feel like what I would really need is tangible support. If I just have a lot on my plate, so I think, maybe something I might say to that friend if they're calling me every day is, I might, could really use help with picking up my prescriptions or something like that. And even the fact that this friend is calling me every day could actually be adding to my stress if I feel like it's kind of becoming a burden. And that friend might not know that. That's kind of not what I'm needing in that moment. So it might help if I voice that to them or something like that.
Yeah, let them know the type of support you need.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So Cindy, we'll have you select the next slide for us, please. Great. So we'll backpedal a little bit before we get to this slide. Yeah. But sometimes it's not always easy to get the social support you need. So there is a page in your manual that talks about barriers to getting different types of social support. So there just are a couple of factors that we wanted to quickly go over to give you a sense of if there's anything adding a little bit more stress or distress when you're trying to receive social support.
So, just like Elena said, like sometimes when we are seeking social support, maybe we don't always feel like it's there. And there are some legitimate reasons why maybe we're feeling that way. So one thing, some things to consider, and I think, I was going to find the page of the manual that it's on really quick.
It's on page 4. Oh. 3.
It is on page 33 of your manual if you're following along. So some things to consider. One is geographical distance. So, now in this day and age with people moving for work or for other reasons, very often we're separated from the people that are closest to us. So that can really create an actual physical barrier between you and your loved ones. Of course, you can talk on the phone, but sometimes it is nice to have people physically near you as your social support. So that can be a barrier. Time or other financial constraints. So if you're very, very busy, like for example, you work very often, and that might be because you need to maintain a certain salary and that kind of thing. Also, other people's willingness to engage in social support can be a barrier. For example, Denver is a good example of this. We're a growing city where a lot of people are moving here from out of state, and it might be like if you're one of those people, you feel like other people kind of already have friends and aren't really reaching out or something like that to connect. So there can be that feeling there. But also, sometimes we need to examine our thoughts and how we're perceiving the barriers to social support. So, some questions to ask yourself might be, am I willing to receive help? Am I willing to ask for help? Are others willing to help me? Am I afraid to ask others? Do I need to be strong and manage on my own? Am I willing to be assertive and set limits? So asking yourself some of those questions can help you kind of navigate whether some of these barriers you might be experiencing are kind of cognitive distortions, or if they're something that you can, take some action to change so that you can improve your stress levels. And then the other thing to consider is to decide what type of social support you need. So this really helps to kind of take that step back, like Elena was saying, and really think about, what am I needing right now? Am I needing emotional support? Do I need help with the chores, with tangible support? Do I need information? Am I confused about what my options are here? Do I need someone to help me with that? So really thinking about what you're needing. And then also, don't be afraid to ask for help. So things to consider with this would be to be direct in communicating your feelings and needs to others, and make sure that you're kind of thinking through the match between what your needs are and what is maybe being offered to you by the people in your social support network, kind of like our example we just went through. So that might be a time where I would have a conversation with my friend who cares about me, but this isn't quite matching up with what my needs are. And then, of course, maybe finding some new avenues for sharing and support. This type of support group is a really great place for that, or therapy or other counseling if you are just feeling like the emotional support needs that you have aren't being met by those in your current network. And then another really big important thing is to set limits and boundaries for yourself in your life, so that, especially on like how much information that you want to disclose to others, because sometimes revealing every important detail or every detail about what's going on is not important, and it can maybe invite some unhelpful support that you weren't really asking for. So I think, yeah.
Okay, so in transitioning to the current slide that we're on, since this is our last session together and we're not going to be meeting every week after this, it's important to keep in mind how you can use this information moving forward. So you can see on this slide it says living a value-based life, and sometimes it's really helpful to just think to yourself, what do I value most in my life? Because stress can often redirect our attention away from what's important to us. And then when this happens, if we're dealing with stress on a day-to-day basis, it's really easy to lose sight of the big picture. So the things that we value most in life. So this exercise is really helpful to just jot down 4 things that you value most in life, and then what are your life goals that will allow you to fulfill these needs. And you can break it up into small portions of thinking about if there are things that you can specifically change this week in order to live more in line with those value-based goals, that value-based life. And then every month, what are some things you can change? And this year. So that way it's not in the back of our mind, or we're having different thoughts of, well, I'll get to this once the stress is taken care of. Stress is always evident in our life, whether that's healthy stress or not. So continuing to prioritize those things can be very important.
Should we do a quick example?
Sure.
So just to do a quick example, just to clarify like how to do this on your own, because I think we feel this is a really important exercise to do. So maybe keeping with the social support theme of this session. So maybe you decide that one of the things that you value most in your life is your family, and spending time with them or having a good relationship with them. So you would write that down like next to the 1, and then going down and looking at the question, what are the most important life goals that will allow me to fulfill those needs? That could be kind of sitting back and reflecting on like, well, maybe I'm not prioritizing my family as much in my life. Maybe I don't get to spend as much time with them as I would like to. So then asking yourself, how would I specifically change my life this week, this month, this year to meet that goal of spending more time with them? Something you could do this week would be, I will, cook dinner with my family one time this week. This month is I'll, plan
Weekend outing.
a weekend outing. And this year would be maybe you like
Visit extended family.
Yeah, visit extended family. Perfect. Thank you. So it's just one way and one value that you can have in your life and to fill this out. Cindy, would you mind going to the next slide? So this next piece is is learning what is urgent versus important. So this goes in line with reaching those goals and prioritizing the valued things in your life. So most of us have something like a list in the back of our minds of all the things that we need to do. And the first thing that we can ask ourselves when we're stressed and we have a lot of things going on in our life, a lot of stressors, is, which things are more important and which things are less important. So another way to also separate things out are what is urgent versus important. So this grid kind of gives you an example of some different activities that when you kind of draw this out, where things might fall. So some things in our life that are important would be, deadline-driven activities. So if you have something due at work, that's pretty important. But also what is important are things like your spiritual growth or planning and reflecting on things, time with your friends and family. Like all of those things are important. But you'll see kind of looking across the top that what tends to be more urgent are these deadline-driven activities, because in our minds we can kind of think, well, my family's always there, I can spend time with them next week and that sort of thing. And so they get put in this less urgent category. And then going down, you can see there are some things that are actually less important, but sometimes we don't necessarily see them that way. So things that might qualify as being less important are some phone calls, certain meetings, things that are pressing and time urgent, but maybe not actually as important. And then some other less important things would be like busy work or binge watching Netflix, or other things like that. And so the difference in these activities is some of those are maybe more urgent, which would oftentimes fall in those kind of like smaller tasks that we have at work and that kind of thing. And less urgent are the more kind of like binge watching TV or busy work or things like that. But what we want you to focus on here is the square that is at the important but less urgent, that one that's circled with the red circle, because what we're focused on in this session is really bringing balance into your life and living a value-driven life. So these things that fall into that category of being important in your life but less urgent very often get put on the back burner. What we want to encourage you to do is really take a moment to reflect on how you're dividing all of the things in your life, and are these things that are truly a priority for you and a value. You can go back to the previous exercise that we just showed you earlier and see, like, are these things that I really value getting pushed back and pushed aside? Am I really prioritizing them in my life? And if you're not, this can really be an opportunity for you to reflect on that and to start to integrate or find ways to integrate those priorities back into your life.
Yeah, and I would also say that by focusing more on the less urgent importance, so again, the red circle, these are different self-care strategies that help recharge your battery, if you will, so you're able to focus on the urgent, important matters as clearly as you can. So even though it might seem less urgent, it still is very important to prioritize that self-care piece.
Yeah. Thank you.
So Cindy will have you select the next slide, please. Great. So in tying all the sessions together, we wanted to just walk through different things that you may have learned about yourself. So this is an activity that you can complete in your manual at your own pace. But again, really looking at the first session, how I can recognize my stress. So again, that's the mind-body connection. When you're feeling stressed, what are you noticing physically, emotionally, behaviorally, and then cognitively through your thoughts? You might notice you're a little bit more heavy on a couple of these than the others, and that's okay. That might just be an indication whenever you're feeling stressed that you know maybe the emotional and physical are your go-to tell signs for yourself when you're feeling stressed. And then going to different patterns of thinking, really thinking about, well, what type of cognitive distortions or unrealistic ways of thinking, what are the most common ones I might experience? And how do these thoughts make me feel, or maybe have a cascading effect of different behaviors in response to these thoughts? It might not be all that in line with reality. And then going back to the next one, new ways of thinking and how I can replace cognitive distortions. We talked in the second session about having more rational thoughts. So going to that ABCD approach, where you come up with evidence for a new thought, and then once you have the new thought, you rate how much you believe this new thought and look at your level of stress then. And again, really focusing on how the new thoughts make you feel. And then the last one, just really focusing on how you can take care of yourself. So to emphasize what we've talked about in today's session, that social support and understanding the value of it as a stress buffer. So Cindy will have you select the next slide for us, please.
Great. So this last piece is a tool that we wanted to focus on for helping you start to make sure you're making time for your self-care. So you've, over the course of these sessions, learned some good strategies for managing your stress, and we want to make sure that you continue to work and practice those different strategies and techniques. So this is a place for you, and again, this is in your participant manual for this session. But this is a place for you to just really plan out and kind of try to make a commitment for the next week of when you're going to take some time to kind of do a little bit of self-therapy. So reflecting on your thoughts and feelings, like Elena was saying, and continuing to try to identify your cognitive distortions and how stress affects your body and all of those things. And then also planning out ahead of time when you might practice a relaxation exercise, because the more you practice them, the more automatic they become, and the better you're able to manage your stress over time. And then also making sure that you're planning some type of pleasurable activity every day, or most days, even if it's something as small as listening to your favorite podcast while you're cooking dinner, small things like that. So this is a good place for you to kind of make sure that you're setting aside time to do each of these things and continue to create that balance and stress management in your life.
Yeah, and I'd also like to say this isn't, a perfect equation for doing things. So particularly with relaxation exercises, you might have thought mornings are the best time for me, but then you might notice that you have working brain going on where you're thinking about everything you need to do for the day. So in that scenario, it's okay if you didn't do the relaxation exercise, but consider maybe what got in the way. And maybe I'm more of a nighttime person that does that before bed because I've gotten everything I needed done for the day.
Mm-hmm.
So just knowing that it's one of those trial and error type of scenarios where you are really thinking about how can I best tweak and adapt this to fit with my day-to-day routine.
Mm-hmm.
So if you struggle a little bit at first, that's totally okay. And there's also a keeping it fun and new chart in your participant manual that has a bunch of different types of pleasurable activities in it for you to consider. I always like to think of, and I said this in the first session we had, if you have any hobbies or activities you really enjoyed as a child that are still relevant to your adult self, why not pick those back up? Why not really look back into that? You might still find the same joy that you experienced when you were your younger self.
Mm-hmm. Cindy, would you mind clicking to the next slide?
So for our relaxation exercise, we have special place imagery, which I would say is probably one of my favorite relaxation exercises that we've shown you in this 4-part series. So when we think of the special place imagery exercise, it's really helping our ability to slow down and deepen our breathing and just begin to relax. So the purpose of this exercise is to really show you that you are completely capable of coming up with your own form of relaxation and finding out what works best for you. Because after all, you're the expert in your relaxation journey. And with this, you imagine a special place. So this exercise really focuses on the different senses you have as you're imagining this place. And it's okay if it takes a little bit of time during this exercise for you to find that place. And your place might change from time to time. Every time you do this exercise, it might not be the same place. And that's totally okay because our journey through self-care is not stagnant. It's always moving. So maybe think of it that way in terms of your special place. So with this special place, we're really focusing on creating in your mind elements that will make you feel most safe and relaxed. So if you start doing the exercise, know that it's okay if you're noting different thoughts coming up in your mind. Our brains tend to wander. Our brains tend to think. That's just what our minds do. So shutting it off completely is really hard to do. So if you are noticing your thoughts coming up, just picture them like billboards that you're driving by on the highway or something to that extent, or clouds going through the sky. Mm-hmm. You're not paying attention to the thoughts, but you're just noting my thoughts are there. And, allow yourself and give yourself instincts to trust your permission to let your place form slowly. So going back to using all of your senses, you're really focusing on what you're seeing in this special place, any sounds that are around you, different smells, taste, and touch. A lot of the time in the exercise, we also have you focus on the temperature. Mm-hmm. So if your special place is a tropical place, you might feel the sun kissing your skin. You might feel this nice breeze going by. Mm-hmm. So just know every time it might change. So we have recorded that exercise for you all to practice, and Cindy will be sending it out after this. But just know that this exercise is one of many that you can engage in. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then Cindy, could you click the next slide? That is.
Yeah. So that is the end of our session today. Thank you for those of you that joined us, and for those of you who might be watching this on the recorded version. We're really glad that you took the time to watch it, and
it's been a pleasure going through these 4 weeks with you, and hopefully you all feel like you were able to take elements of the 4 sections and really apply it to your own experience through your scleroderma journey. If you have any questions, you can certainly reach out to Cindy, and she can reach out to us to answer those questions. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Elena and Sydney Jane. We really appreciate all the hard work and effort that you put into this and leading us in these 4 sessions. It's been very informational, and we really appreciate your time.
Thank you. We've really enjoyed doing this
Yeah.
and are happy to do any more if you have availability.
Yeah.
Great. And again, if you do want to reach out, if you need any of the slides, the participant manual, or any of the other materials, just email us at cochapter@scleroderma.org. Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night.
Bye.